Shalom, everybody. This is Olivier, and I am looking forward again to our show today. I have a regular. He's becoming a irregular, and he always brings good information, knowledge, and wisdom to the show. Uh, and boy, do we have stuff to talk about today in light of what happened over the weekend. Just interesting, crazy time we live in. Uh, a historic moment, really. So we're going to talk about that. Just want to remind you that you'll see on the screen the QR code that is showing right now. It's a QR code for you to connect to our new Telegram channel, so you can get all the information live, updated throughout the day on what's going on in the world in terms of Bible prophecy, end times, anti-Semitism, Israel, and anything connected to all that. So please make sure you subscribe and tell your friends. We want to grow that channel so more people get good information that they can rely on. Of course, you are on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe if you haven't already. Go to visit our website at shalomandmessiah.com, and you can connect with us many different ways, get resources on that website, as well as support our ministry, support the work that we do by donating to our work. And we thank you, all of you, helping us do the ministry. So it makes a big difference. So I want to introduce my good friend. It is John Holler. John, welcome to the
Olivier,
show.
hi. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I need to put my glasses on because if I don't put my glasses on, I don't understand things. So there you go. That's the way it
That's your
goes.
secret power, sort of the opposite of Clark Kent.
Exactly, that is my secret power. John, I just you and I a couple of weeks ago, you know, tongue in cheek, you said, Olivier, when I do a recording, I have to post it right away because by the end of the day, it's just not. I'm not sure it's relevant anymore. It's not getting any better, is it?
No, in fact, I put on my Facebook page the other night that we've kind of joked about that in the Bible prophecy community as things seem to be ramping up as we move further into this period that I think a lot of us agree are the end times. That the shelf life of anything that you do gets increasingly short. So sometimes I record with people and they might not put it up for a week or two. And then people say, well, why didn't you talk about all this other stuff that happened in the meantime? And it's because we recorded in advance. But the problem now is not so much that the shelf life expires in a day or an hour or 2 hours. I work very hard for my update all day Saturday, and then with no notice and with no warning or calling me and asking me if it would be okay, President Trump decided to direct an attack on three nuclear installations facilities in Iran. So I
Usually,
said my update expired before I even gave it.
but Trump usually calls you on Saturday night, right?
No, I mean it would be helpful if he did,
Yes.
or call me up and we'll go play golf and give everybody else a break.
There you go. Well, I was at a dinner with some friends on Saturday night, and I had mentioned I had a conversation with my wife earlier in the weekend, and I'm not a modern day prophet. I don't even believe that biblically the gift of prophecy is for today, but that's maybe for another conversation. But I I'm a watchman on the wall. I look at the events, and I told Ellen, I said, I don't see how the weekend could be over and the US not getting involved. They will Something will happen before the end of the weekend. And sure enough, Saturday night it happened. So what was your first reaction when you heard about it? What did you think?
Well, I thought it was bold. I thought it was decisive, and my initial reaction was that MAGA world, a lot of people who have claimed they're Trump supporters are going to melt down over this. It's not that he's committing troops or anything like that on the ground. He's just attacking a nuclear facility. He claims it's a one and done. Now it's questionable whether it's going to be a one and done. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, well, it's a one and done until they find out they have more capacity to do damage. They might have moved some of their stuff. They might have stuff that we don't know about. So it's a one and done based on the intel they had, I guess.
Sure. And,
You know?
so, it's interesting that Dmitry Medvedev,
Yes.
Medvedev, who was a president of Russia. It seems like some of these countries that claim to be democracies, excuse me, had these uh, constitutional changes that allow the president or prime minister to continue in the office of the new president or prime minister. So Medvedev was the president of Russia, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, not for long though.
No, and then Putin kind of came back into power, but he's around, and he's sort of like Putin's. Um, it sounds derogatory to say it, but it's also truthful. He's kind of Putin's water boy. And he says, in a series of tweets that he did yesterday on X, can we still call them X or tweets if they're on X instead of Twitter
Uh,
posts?
yeah, what
I guess
yeah.
the language changes, so it's hard to keep up.
But yeah,
But
I saw that what he said. Yeah.
right, but I think that if you look at it, I mean, websites like Honest Reporting, which is a good website and everything, they said that in his one, he says the enrichment of nuclear material, and now we can say it outright, the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. And if you, excuse me, one
Well,
second.
and read the next line. A number of countries are ready to directly supply Iran with their own nuclear warheads. So wait a minute now. Iran was not developing nuclear power. They were just doing this for energy within the country. So
But he said in the second paragraph, he had like 10 paragraphs that he
right,
tweeted or posted in a series
right.
of posts. And number two was the future production of nuclear weapons will continue. And everybody said, well, there's no weapons program and everything. And they took what the U.S. DNI, Department of National Intelligence, had put out. Tulsi Gabbard had testified about it on, I think it was March 25th before Congress. Everybody says, see, she says there's no weapons development program. And she posted yesterday, no, that's not what I said. I said that they had distributed the production throughout the country so that they could quickly assemble a nuclear weapon if they decided to go that way. So it's not like they were not doing anything. And Medvedev, and Russia's been very involved in the Iranian nuclear program since the JCPOA. Since the JCPOA came into effect, they know what's going on there probably better than any other country outside of Iran. Even Putin said last week, "Don't you dare bomb Bushehr." That's the big nuclear facility on the Persian Gulf in the area that we would call historical. Was known as Elam,
Right.
and our friend Bill Salas has written books on that. And so he says we've got hundreds of advisors helping the Iranians at that facility. And that was part of the JCPOA agreement, I believe, that Iran would get nuclear power outside to help. So they went to Russia, of course. So, but here's Medvedev saying, the future production of nuclear weapons. Well, all the people on the right that are melting down are saying, oh, there was no production of nuclear weapons. And it's just not true. Even according to the Kremlin.
So, for the benefit of our audience, spell out JCPOA so they know what you're talking about.
The joint something. It was the agreement that was negotiated by the Obama administration back in 2015 that would allow, it would sort of push things off into the future. It was sort of a typical thing that a lot of American presidents do is they push off hard decisions until the next guy's in office, and then the next guy has to deal with it. And under the JCPOA, if you remember the pallets of cash that were delivered to Tehran,
From Obama.
and also banking sanctions that were lifted, it probably resulted in what, by some estimates, $150 billion total. Much of it in cash, at least probably 10 billion in cash, being released to the mullahs in Iran. And cash is what they want because then they can. Uh, that's why the world likes to get rid of cash because you can't monitor its usage as well. So they were able to fund Hezbollah. They were able to fund Hamas. They
The
were able
Houthis.
to fund other groups in. They were funding Hezbollah type militias or Hezbollah militias in Syria. And so Iran always had this methodology that they adopted that, for example, we will fight the Israelis, we will fight the Jews in Lebanon to the last dead Lebanese. They were always able to keep their people out of it for the most part. So so this really is a game changer. Exactly how it's going to play out and what the reaction is going to be. Iran has come out and said we're going after the American bases throughout the Middle East. And I don't know how many people we have over there, 40, 50,000 people among these bases. Trump's trying to bring some of them home. So Trump has then responded to the Tehran statements that if you do anything
It'd be a lot
that
worse.
inflicts, it'll be a lot worse. You
Right. And
will
and
regret the day that you do anything to
and
us.
you have to you have to believe that he means what he says. He says what he means because he's got a track record now. He's got a track record of he's gave him 60 days. They didn't pay attention. Then that happened. So, and I think that what took place on Saturday night should also be a wake up call for North Korea and Turkey and other countries. Don't you think they should look at this and go, okay, he really is serious about taking care of business.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I don't know exactly if the people who need to get that message won't. So that's always the problem.
Now, uh, the other topic that several other topic, another one that is like right now on the news is the Strait of Hormuz, where about 20% of oil supplies go through, and so I've read a little bit about it. I watched a few things, and apparently, it would really crippled. It would cripple not necessarily us, like the U.S., up front, but it would cripple. Iran would lose a lot of business too. It would cripple China, apparently.
China gets about 60% of its current oil supplies from Iran. Even though Iran has been under sanctions, they use sort of unregistered they turn the transponders off of oil tankers and they go through the Straits of Hormuz. But it is one of the major choke points in world shipping. There are a number of them. There's near Singapore, South China Sea, the area over near Yemen, the I'm trying to remember the name of it, the strait there that leads up to the Suez Canal, and of course the around the Cape of the Africa, and also down in the Panama Canal, and also the end of the tip of South America. So these are major shipping choke points that
Right,
are problems.
right.
But the problem with the Straits of Hormuz and closing down that, there's no doubt, there's absolutely no doubt that if Iran starts to do this, the U.S. will respond, and Israel will respond, and they will take out whatever navy the Iranians have. Now the Iranians have some submarines I don't know how effective they are. That's sort of beyond my area of competence, but they do have a lot of fast speedboats. They can lay mines in the in the Straits of Hormuz there at the entrance to the Persian Gulf. They're sort of cutting off their nose to spite their face. Now, there's a lot of alternatives that have been developed. People that talk in Bible prophecy, they talk about China. I think one of the things China's done is to try to change the sea route. They've put in this Belt Road Initiative. They've been, building that over time. That's led them to develop a big port near sort of the border of Pakistan and Iran. They've also just opened part of a railway to Tehran. Tehran and Russia are moving to do this. But this shutting down the Straits of Hormuz hurts everybody. It hurts Iran. It hurts Saudi Arabia. It hurts Qatar. It hurts the United Arab Emirates because all of them, and Kuwait, it hurts all of them in getting their oil to market. The pipeline system is not robust enough to make up for the loss of the sea lanes that would happen there at the Straits of Hormuz.
But at the end of the day, don't you think that Iran, I mean the current regime, I want to talk a little bit about that as well, but the current regime, they don't really want to disappear. They want to, I mean, if there's anything that the Ayatollahs can do to stay in power, they will. They want to stay in power, even they might become less of a force to reckon with. They want to stay in power. So how stupid are they going to get? I mean, how far do they want to go in their defiance and their pride? I just that I'm a little puzzled by that.
Well, they don't think like we do.
That's true.
They don't. They want to destroy the West, and so they see the big, as we've said, the big Satan is America, the little Satan is Israel, and they believe that they can bring about the apocalypse and the coming of their chosen one, the
The
Mahdi,
Mahdi, the
by
12th
causing
Imam.
chaos, and then that drives their politics, it drives their military operations, and right now everybody that's in charge in Iran is really part of this Islamic cult that believes they can bring about the end times
Apocalyptic
by causing
Islam.
chaos.
Yeah, like the apocalyptic Islam.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they call it. Um, the the regime right now. I've been following some. I've been listening to some of those speeches that what's his name?
Khomeini.
Reza. No. Reza Pahlavi. Reza
Oh,
Pahlavi,
oh, yeah,
the
the
Shah's
son of
son.
the Shah. Yeah, the
Yes,
crown. Well, he would
the
be the
crown
crown
prince. The
prince.
crown prince, and I mean, he sounds like he could bring Iran back to pre 1979. But people also need to remember that the Shah was not squeaky clean.
The Shah was not beloved in Iran. I mean, at best he might have had maybe 50% approval, of the people there.
Right.
And he came. I think history is pretty clear that he came to power I think it was in the 50s in a CIA sponsored revolution. And I had a deposition many years ago with a lady, and she had been married for a while to a man from Iran. And shortly after they got married, they went back to Iran, and it was right after the revolution. And she was telling me of driving down the streets in Tehran with bodies hanging from the light poles, and that was the message sent by the Shah about who he's in power. It's a very different culture than ours. I mean, we sort of say, well, there's just no place in the world that can be like that. Well, yeah, there is a place in the world that could be like that. So the Shah was not loved. And then when the revolution happened, that was facilitated in large part by, for some reason, we've had this very pro-Iranian contingent within the American, I'll call it the deep state, that has always pushed the Iranian agenda. And it's been across many administrations. It even was apparent in the Reagan administration to many degrees. Um, so I mean, you had Secretary of State James Baker in the Reagan years, who's really no friend of Israel. So I don't understand it. And then it got even worse under the Obama administration, particularly with John Kerry, who is very close with
Oh yeah.
Zarif, who was the foreign minister of Iran back in the days of the Obama administration. So I don't understand it. It's clear that their agenda is something different. And everybody says, well, it's not our war, it's over there. But it's pretty clear there's a lot of intelligence. There was uh, information coming out. There's people like Sarah Adams and that type of thing talking about sleeper terror cells that may be activated by Iran because of this. And by the way, Hezbollah has an extensive network throughout Venezuela and also through South and Central America. So if we think that this stuff is staying over there, I think it's just a very naive thing. But what's happening in America is the a lot of people on the right in America are in total meltdown over this. This is the end of the Trump presidency. He should be impeached. And then you see
On the
the
right, because I've heard the usual suspects, the like
AOC and those people.
AOC,
Yeah.
yeah, but no,
No. Thomas Massey, who's a Republican,
right. But
claims to be a
that's
Republican
the only one.
congressman.
That's the only one I heard that was actually disagreeing.
Well, no, but I'm talking about like in the political spectrum, like the Steve Bannon's, Jack Posobiec, all the people on the mega right, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're all melting down over this. Of course, then Tucker Carlson was doing his sort of schoolgirl, teenage schoolgirl histrionics and an interview of Ted Cruz about this. So he's there too. It's just
Yeah,
uh,
Tucker Carlson does not. I mean, I had to mention him in a recent article and in a conversation I had with another gentleman on my channel. But he's really he's an embarrassment. He and Candace Owens. Candace Owens is I mean, Tucker Carlson is one level of I mean, he annoys me, and I'm not talking about his laughter, which annoys me, but I'm talking about his handling of the host. I watched these. By the way, as a little parenthesis, I watched this whole thing with Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz was not at the top of his game. He was not prepared in many ways, and
right.
and that was embarrassing. But so all those guys on the MAGA right are, I mean, they're not calling for impeachment.
Uh, I
Some on the
No, I
left.
think what Massey's doing, for example, is he's signing on to war powers resolutions to say that Trump's not allowed to do this.
But Trump, what he did, correct me if I'm wrong, is not was not unconstitutional. He was within his right as a president to do what he did. Wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, look, you remember back in the early days of the first Trump administration, there was a cruise missile attack on a air base in Syria. It really didn't result in much damage. I mean, the thing was operational again, and that kind of shows the limitations of airstrikes and how they're not always permanent. But Obama dropped like, I don't know, somebody did a tally. It was like 26,000 bombs
In
across.
1 year, 26,000 in 1 year. Yeah, I heard that this morning on Newsmax
And so now
actually.
Trump's done six bombs and 70 cruise missiles or something. So
In a few
and nobody
tomahawks.
melted
Yeah.
down over Obama that I can remember.
And yeah, so it's again, you look at the double standards, and I mean, I think what he did was, I think this will be remembered as one of the major events in both terms. He, if indeed he truly did stop Iran from getting the bomb, but uh, did Iran move stuff ahead of time? I don't know.
They could have.
They
I
could have.
mean, it's somebody, I have a friend, and we disagree, so we kind of go back and forth on these things. So I'm not. Listen, Russia's hands are all over this, in my opinion, and I think this is very significant. Russia plays this off to keep Russia's stated that they want to establish a new world order based on a Russia-based, Eurasia-based world order.
And
So
Medvedev also said, like you just quoted, that several countries, probably including Russia, are willing to supply Iran with nuclear warheads. So Russia is got, yeah, they've got their hands stained with blood as well.
right, and somebody will say, well, Israel has nuclear weapons, or is at least believed to have nuclear weapons. Why don't we bomb them? Well, there's a difference.
You-
And if you can't see the difference, and I don't know if we talked about this the last time I was on, when Islam invaded India back in the Middle Ages, there's a little dispute among historians, but I think the better evidence is that the invading Islamic armies over the course of a century, so this has been back about the 1300s, killed 400 million Indians, 400 million, the largest genocide in human history. And the nature of Islam has not changed. And Iran is sort of one of its central proponents. I would say Iran and Turkey, one Shia, one Sunni. And this is a big problem. This is a problem that's not going away, and it has to be addressed.
No, and that's the thing that people need to understand. The infrastructure, the facilities, the weapons might go away, but the ideology continues. The ideology of radical Islam, which, frankly, every time I say radical Islam, I have to remind myself it's more like Quranic Islam, or as we say, biblical Christianity, Quranic Islam, Islam that adheres to the teaching of the Quran. If you are a Quranic, or if you adhere to the teaching of the Quran, then you have no choice but to seek the death of the infidels if they don't submit to Islam, become dhimmis, or second class citizens, or die if they don't submit. And of course, Islam, once they've been in a piece of land anywhere on the planet, even if they're there for half an hour, tongue in cheek, it becomes theirs, and then they will do whatever they can to reconquer that area later in history. So that's the way they seek to eventually conquer the whole planet and make it a global caliphate. That's the goal of Islam, and it's not the way the West thinks, but that's the way they think. And it really is a clash of civilizations, because it's completely two different ideologies. And I don't care how much structural damage we do to the nuclear facilities in Iran. That ideology, even if all the imams and the ayatollahs and the mullahs, they all cease to rule Iran, they will not cease to exist, and the ideology will be carried. I mean, like right now, Ayatollah has picked, and I'm sure they're going like, "Oh, great, why me?" He's picked three people, three people to possibly replace him if he's killed, and or if he dies, or and the people are going like, "Great, what have I done to deserve such
Yeah.
a selection?"
Well, but the fundamentalists, their goal is to die a martyr. So
Right.
by taking them out, we sort of help them along. So the question you asked earlier, is there going to be regime change? By the way, there's going to be regime change in a lot of places. We can talk about Israel in a minute, but with regard to Iran, I'm not optimistic that there will be regime change. And even if there is a regime change, first of all, nobody's invading Iran physically.
No.
This is all going to be an air power bombing from the air war, because Iran is a lot of people call it a fortress country. It's surrounded by mountains, big mountains around Tehran. Very difficult to get armies in through there, and it's a very big country. So that's not going to happen. But will there be regime change? I don't know. And then if there is a regime change, who takes over? For example, I think I said this a while back that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, could come to power and take over from the Ayatollah, from the religious regime, but it's not going to be any better because they
No.
think the same way.
Right.
But I do think that it was very clever what Israel did when they started this campaign about 10 days ago. It's so funny because I interviewed somebody from Israel the morning after everything started a week ago, Friday.
Right.
And then Thursday, interviewed him again, Brian Schrager. And it was sort of like, well, and it was like, wait a minute, this hasn't even been a week yet that this is going on. It seems like it's been going on for a year. But what Israel did initially was they took out extensive numbers of the upper leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Khomeini appointed a replacement, and that guy was then taken out. So, what your comment you made earlier is appropriate. But I think what Israel was doing was, okay, look, if we want to affect regime change, we don't want it to go to the IRGC, so we're going to take out their leadership. They also took out many of the top nuclear scientists, but not
Yes.
the top one. They weren't able to get him. So I think they sort of were planning for that. But then the question is, what replaces it? I don't know that.
What about Reza Pahlavi? Do you think he has a chance?
I I would put it as 10% maybe. I don't know that the Iranian people want him. I know he's very articulate. I think he's been preparing for this for a while, but I just don't know how it happens. Like I said, it's a very big country, but it's also a very complex country because there are a lot of different competing ethnic tribal groups that the only way it holds together is through a brutal dictatorship.
And
Uh,
if even if somebody like Pahlavi, the crown prince, comes back onto the scene and tries the best he can to bring Iran back to pre-79 democracy and modern westernized Middle Eastern country, there's still going to be a vast number of Islamists and devout Muslims in Iran, and they might not be in power, but there's still going to be you know a lot of Sharia law abiding Iranians. Am I wrong?
no, there's a lot. There's always going to be that undercurrent, and the question will be how powerful will they, how far will they go to exercise their power or cause chaos? I listen. We're Bible prophecy guys, right? So we know there's prophecies about some coming invasions of Israel, and Persia is part of that. So maybe there's nothing going to change, or maybe it's going to change in a way that we haven't thought about. I'm going to suggest something to you. I was listening to an interview of Duran Spillman, who used to be the IDF spokesperson, just wrote a book called When the Stones Speak, I think, about the city of David. Interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he had an interview the other day on his Just East podcast on JNS with Michael Duran, who's with Hudson Institute and does a podcast with Gadi Taub and that type of thing, Israel Update. And they had a very interesting conversation. So Duran made this point. The country that manufactures more artillery in the world, more than Europe combined, is North Korea. That's kind of an interesting fact, because Israel, the Europeans, everybody thought we'll have this fast responding small army. It didn't work. It didn't work. We saw that on October 7th. It completely failed.
Yeah.
And then he said, though, the only country in Europe that really he would exclude from that statistic on North Korea would be Turkey. And what Turkey has done over the last 40 years, particularly the last 25 years under Erdogan, has achieved operational sovereignty. Very interesting term. And he said they have designed themselves to be able to function as a country if everybody cuts them off, and function as a military. And to which Ron Spielman said, very interesting comment, Israel needs to do the same thing. We need to get away to being tied to the US. So as an aside,
Right.
people say, well, why didn't Israel build the bunker buster bombs? They should have just built their own bunker buster bombs.
Right.
Well, they have a memorandum of understanding with the United States. There was a 10-year, I think a 10-year extension or renewal of that signed at the end of the Obama administration. It gives them the ability to buy, it requires them to buy weapons and not produce some of their own. It's more of a protection of the American defense
Business.
industry.
Right. It's more a business deal than anything.
But Spielman made this very interesting comment in that podcast, and he said, maybe Turkey will take over Iran. And that's kind of interesting
It
because,
sure
you know,
is.
if you think that Daniel 8, which talks about the ram and the goat, might be an end times thing, I'm kind of inclined to believe it is. Maybe that's some indication that that's what's going to happen. But ultimately, we know that when this thing happens, and Ezekiel 38:39, Turkey's in that coalition for sure that
Right.
comes.
And Ezekiel 38, the war of Gog and Magog, includes Iran. So Iran has to continue to exist one way or the other.
Right, but it may be as a Turkish vassal state. And that's possible. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but clearly Erdogan has stated that that's one of his goals. So it's a massive, very confused, complicated geopolitical situation there. And then there's also the Israeli geopolitical situation, which seems to be changing. I would say you've been there more recently than I have. I would say what 85% of the people support what support what the IDF under Netanyahu has been doing in these various operations. I mean, and it's what they've done is amazing. You know,
Yeah.
they've neutralized Hamas, which was an Iranian sponsored proxy.
Proxy, yeah.
They've neutralized Hezbollah. Syria has completely changed, and they seem to have that under control for now, although I don't trust that guy that's there.
No.
And so Iran has been completely isolated from their proxies. So I don't know. And so Netanyahu, you know, what was it, a week ago, they were talking about the coalition falling apart and Israel having to go to elections in the midst of all this. Now there's some talk, I was reading today, that Netanyahu will, well, first of all, there's talk even on the left in Israel about getting rid of these legal cases against Netanyahu. They were always a bunch of
Right. Lawsuits.
garbage
Yeah.
made
Yeah. Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And so here's the prime minister of Israel having to testify for all day long for days at a time in these cases. I don't understand. I mean, I was a trial lawyer. I don't understand how these things go for so long. When I was in Israel in December 2022, I asked people at the Knesset, you know, how long are these cases going to go against Netanyahu? And they said 5 or 6 years. And I'm like, I'm a litigator. I don't understand how that happened. So here he is testifying all the time. But now there's people on both sides of the political aisle in Israel saying we need to drop these cases. And I think Netanyahu is a politician and he sees that as an opportunity. And so what he's going to say is, okay, let's go to elections and we'll see what happens. I'll take my chances. So we may see elections in Israel in the near
Yeah,
future.
but right now I think he's in a good place.
Right. I mean, you know, look, I mean, you know, and then people say, well, see, he just controlled Trump. He controls Trump and he got Trump to do what he needed to do so he could stay in power.
Now, yeah.
Um,
So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens on that. Now, a lot of a lot of people are conjecturing on Ezekiel 38, Gog and Magog, and I don't think we've hit it yet. I think the stage continues to be set, but I keep pushing another prophecy because of the 20 5 plus years that I've been looking at what's happening with the Jewish people globally, and I'm convinced that Zechariah 12:3, the whole world going against Jerusalem, the turning against the Jews. We've seen a lot of it, especially since October 7th, 2023. But I think that what happened over the weekend is going to even embolden those who hate the Jews to act against them. And I mean, the State Department just made a statement, or was it yesterday or this morning, saying, for Americans, be careful where you're traveling. And so now, um, I'm concerned, of course, for Americans, but I'm also very much concerned for my people, the Jewish people, because and those who support Israel. I think it's going to continue to increase, regardless of what happens in Iran, or even if Netanyahu, as he has mentioned, I think today he said, like, we're almost done. We'll be done within a couple of days with our, I guess they had a program of what they wanted to achieve in Iran, and they're almost done with everything they wanted to accomplish. That, according to him, so which is sending a message of, hey, we're not looking at a long war of attrition. We're looking at taking care of business and moving on. I hope it's true, but I also, I'm very aware that there are many sleeper cells, and that Iran might not just use their people to go after U.S. bases in the Middle East, but some sleeper cells will be activated in various places in the UK, or in France, or in the United States. What do you think on that?
Well, I think that's true. I mean, I think we're going to live in a very volatile time. I tell people all the time, you need to be situationally aware. And I would also say, if you're in a church that's online and has issued content that would be considered pro-Israel, I think you need to be uh, on heightened alert for what might happen. So you need to have a security team in place, because we don't know what's going to happen. This thing might be widely distributed. Part of what Tehran wants to do is they want to cause chaos everywhere, because they think it's in that chaos that brings their hidden imam uh, back to power.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
but they also believe that Jesus is involved in this too, and they're very messed up in there, but they have a totally different eschatology.
oh, the Iranians.
Yes.
Yeah, the mullahs. Yeah, no, that definitely. Well, uh, we need to wait and see on this. I don't want to speculate too much, but then again, we might not have to wait and see wait too long before we see, because things are changing so quickly. So I don't know if the regime is going to change. Like you said, it's changing for what? I mean. This is not something that happens overnight. Going back to, I mean, how difficult would it be for Iran to go back to a pre-79 regime? It's not something that could happen. Like I said, no more burqas, no more Sharia law. People have lived with that for 46 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I liken Iran to, there's a movie that I like that's probably not very sanctified to like this movie, just because of, I think, the lessons you can learn from it, is The Godfather. And so I view the way the Iranian mullahs exercise power very similar to The Godfather model, the crime family model. They parcel off this to the IRGC, they parcel off this to somebody else, and these families control vast fortunes. Uh, the Ayatollah himself, although he reportedly lives fairly modestly, controls a fortune of about $100 billion that he's able to push his ideology. The IRGC is way up there. If you remember, a former, I think, president of Iran, a guy named Rafsanjani, who passed away a few years ago. Rafsanjani controlled a fortune of about 25 or $26 billion by most estimates. And they use that. So it's like this crime syndicate that controls the country. And so breaking that apart is very difficult because they've distributed power through many different areas as a way to protect themselves. They keep everybody at each other internally. And so then if something happens at the top, the next person coming up can kind of take power. So that's why the Ayatollah's appointed a few different people, including one I think is his son, to replace him. And he's 86. He's not, not going to be around. He's been there
Right.
for 1989. So what's that? 36 years.
Yeah, it's a long
He's
time.
been there for a very long time.
Well, I think I'm gonna quote something that you'll get, but I'm not sure our audience will get. Some will. I think that the Ayatollahs have gone to the mattresses. If you know what I mean. By the way, it's a reference to the movie you just quoted. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, you and I are both in trouble because it is actually my favorite movie as well, and not because it's got some good Christian values, but it's my I'll tell you what, my top three, a little trivia here. Olivier's top three absolute all times favorite movies are, and not necessarily in that order, but they're The Godfather, Part One, Schindler's List, and Casablanca. Those are my three top favorite
Okay.
movies.
Well, good. I was afraid you were going to come up with My Little Pony or something there at the end. So
So you've got it's your favorite movie of all time is The Godfather.
I do like it. My wife, she she just really does not like it, and so I also am a fan of Rambo: First Blood Part Two.
Yeah,
Uh, for
I
some reason, that movie resonates with me on many levels.
okay. So now I don't know if people took you and I seriously before, but now they're
Now they
definitely
certainly won't.
now we're definitely not going to be taken seriously. Anyway, well, I think I don't want to. I don't think we can top this. We can do any to finish the show to say to our audience, our respective audiences that we absolutely really love the movie The Godfather. And again, we're not promoting Christian values here, purely entertainment. Because friends, please don't post in the comments that we're pagans and we're not saved and we should never talk about those things. We're not saying that we should be showing The Godfather in church. We're just saying that for entertainment, there was a well-made movie, and you can learn from everything.
I think I forgot to send you the one post I saw on X about Netanyahu contacted Macron at France and said, "We need your help." And Macron responds, "We will never send arms to Israel to help them in this fight." And Netanyahu said, "No, no, no. I just want you to help to teach Tehran how to surrender."
And I'm coming from France, so I
I
should
know. That's why I said that.
I should be offended. Well,
Can,
I'll
can
finish
I
with
just say one thing real quickly?
yeah,
Listen, this is a very much a defining issue of our time. You're
yes,
exactly right about Zechariah 12, the nation turning against Israel. And so I told people yesterday in my update, you need to go home and every day this week you need to read Romans 9 through 11 because you're going to see a lot of people. You saw and I don't think, uh, I agree with you, Ted Cruz was not really well prepared in that interview with Tucker to defend his position. But you saw how Tucker took that position. Olivier, I read these prophecies and stuff. I believe them they're to be true.
yeah.
They're going to come about. They're allegorical in some respect. They're literal in others. But I don't see how they come about without a nation of Israel existing in the land at the time. They don't make any sense without
That's
that.
right. That's right.
And it says, the deliverer will come from Zion who will remove ungodliness from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins.
That's in Romans 11.
Romans 11, 26, 27.
Yeah.
And so how does this play out in the world? And I really think that we in the church, we need to start thinking about this. because this is really the defining issue that we need to be prepared to. God will work it out, but we're also here as his servants to
Yeah.
facilitate that. And by the way, this doesn't mean that we agree with everything that Israel does.
No, I could not agree more with that statement. Absolutely. I mean, that was part of a post of a blog I did a couple of days ago. Absolutely. But you're right. It's a perfect time for the church to do a refresher course on Romans 9, 10, 11. To be honest with you, to many in the church, it's not going to be a refresher course. To many in the church, it's going to be like, oh, I didn't know this was there, because a lot of times, like some scriptures that are uncomfortably speaking of the Messiah in the Jewish scriptures, they are skipped in the synagogue because we don't want to point to Jesus, because that's not the Jewish thing. Of course it is, but my people don't believe it is. Well, the same way in a Christian church, Romans 9, 10, 11 is unavoidably speaking of Israel, past, present, and future. And when you look at this, you have to see that Israel has to exist, like you just mentioned, and that it plays a part all the way to the end. And so a lot of people don't read, or they just ignore, they glance over, they ignore Romans 9, 10, 11. So a lot of people in the church today have never really paid attention to those three chapters. So thanks for bringing them up. I think it's very true.
I agree. I just think people need to be sort of immersing themselves in passages like that right now. And Zechariah and Isaiah. I mean, there's a lot of these things are operative, and we always got to be aware of deception and that type of thing that can come in through many different avenues. But I think this is a very core issue
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
in the world and the church, and it's playing out right in front of our eyes.
So John, where can people find you?
Fellowship Bible Chapel on YouTube, fbchapel.com, on the internet, Real FBC on Rumble, and then I have accounts, John Haller 54, and some others on some of the social media platforms, and then on Facebook as well. I don't post. I'm sort of not. I have a Telegram account, but I don't post that much there because I kind of take a little different approach. I don't want to be the first to post things. I want to be right when I post it.
Right. You won't have to
You know.
backpedal. Yeah. Well,
Yeah. Right.
I know I get it, and I try to be careful, especially in our day and age when things go so fast. So, well, John, thank you. This about does it for our show today. Thank you for the conversation. I hope this will be helpful to our viewers, friends. Again, I'll put how to get a hold of John in the description. Make sure you connect with us on YouTube and subscribe. Make sure you go to our Telegram channel, Shalom and Messiah Updates, and to our website, shalomandmessiah.com. Thank you for watching. Until next time, Shalom and be blessed.